Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Today, we're going to be getting into chapter 11 and 12, Interest in Public Affairs. You may notice I have new spectacles here. So I am trying those out today, seeing how those do. And, just wanted to say thank you again for tuning in. Thanks for watching. And, trying to be as consistent as I can. But gotta keep at it. So, with that being said, I hope y'all are ready for a little bit of reading on this wonderful Tuesday morning. Let's get into it. Let's switch over to it. There we go. Oop. And switch. Okay, I realized I didn't turn my preview off. There we go. Now, as you can see, I've got all my chats up here, so if you have any, give me a chat, I will be able to see it. The simplest way to do it is I know right now, but maybe I'll figure out something else later. Obviously, so don't miss it. But we are on chapter 9, chapter 11, Interest in Public Affairs. Last we left off, he was setting up his public service with the Library of the United States for Richard's Almanac. So, and then he was talking about the virtue of a good life as well. But with that, let us get into a little bit here. I'm going to switch. Give that a shot. We'll give that a shot. So, yeah, I think that should work. So, hold on a second. This one too. Even. Oh. There we go. Try that. Try that. That should work. Now we should be good. All right. Chapter 12. 11. Interest in Public Affairs. I began now to turn my thoughts a little to public affairs. Beginning, however, with small matters. The city watch was one of the first things I conceived to want regulation. It was managed by the constables of the respective wards in turn. The constable warned a number of housekeepers to attend him for the night. Those who chose never to attend paid him 6 shillings. Picked 6 shillings a year to be excused, which was supposed to be the hiring substitutes, but was in reality much more than was necessary for that purpose, and made the constableship a place of profit. And the constable, for a little drink, often got ragamuffins about him as a watch that respectable housekeepers did not choose to mix with. Walking the rounds, too, was often neglected in most of the nights and in tippling. I thereupon wrote a paper to be read in Junto, representing these irregularities, but insisting more particularly on the inequality of the 6-shilling tax of the constables, respecting the circumstances of those who paid it, since a poor widow housekeeper, all those whose property to be guarded by the watch did not perhaps exceed the value of £50, paid as much as the wealthiest merchant, who had the thousands of pounds worth of goods in his stores. On the whole, I proposed, as a more effectual watch, the hiring of proper men to serve constantly in that business, and as a more equitable way of supporting the charge, the levying a tax that should be proportioned to the property. This idea, being approved by the Junto, was communicated to the other clubs, but as arising in each of them, and though the plan was not immediately carried into execution, yet by preparing the minds of people for the change, paved the way for the law obtained a few years after, when the members of our clubs were grown into more influence. About this time I wrote a paper, first to be read in Junto, but it was afterward published, on the different accidents and carelessness by which houses were set on fire, with cautions against them, and means proposed of avoiding them. This was much spoken of a useful piece, and gave the rise to a project which soon followed it, of forming a company for the more extinguishing of fires and mutual assistance, removing and securing of goods when in danger. Associates in this scheme were presently found, amounting to 30. Our articles of agreement obliged every member to keep always in good order, the fit for use, a certain number of leather buckets, with strong bags and baskets for packing and transporting goods, which were to be brought to every fire, and we agreed to meet once a month and spend a social evening together, discoursing and communicating such ideas as occurred to us upon the subjects of fires as might be useful in our conduct on such occasions. The utility of this institution soon appeared, and many more desiring to be admitted than we thought convenient for one company, they were advised to form another, which was accordingly done, and this went on, one new company being formed after another, till they became so numerous as to include most of the inhabitants who were men of property. And now, at the time of my writing, this, though upwards of 50 years since its establishment, that which I first formed, called the Union Fire Company, still subsists and flourishes, though the first members are all deceased but myself and one, who is older by a year than I am. The small fines that have been paid by members for absence at the monthly meetings have been applied to the purchase of fire engines, ladders, fire hooks, and other useful implements for each company, so that I question whether there is a city in the world better provided with the means of putting a stop to beginnings of conflagrations. And, in fact, since the institutions, the city has never lost by fire more than 1 or 2 houses at a time, and the flames have been extinguished before the house in which they began has been half consumed. So he's talking about how he made a fire company. That's pretty cool. In 1739, arrived among us from Ireland the Reverend Mr. Whitfield, who had made himself remarkable there as an itinerant preacher. He was at first permitted to preach in some of our churches, but the clergy, taking a dislike to him, soon refused him the pulpits, and he was obliged to preach in the fields. The multitudes of all sects and denominations that attended his sermons were enormous, and it was a matter of speculation to me, who was one of the number, to observe the extraordinary influence of his oratory on his hearers, and how much they admired and respected him, notwithstanding his common abuse of them, by assuring them they were naturally half beasts and half devils. It was wonderful to see the change soon made in the manners of our inhabitants, from being thoughtless or indifferent about religion. It seemed as if all the world were growing religious, so that one could not walk through the town in an evening without hearing psalms sung in different families of every street. And it being found inconvenient to assemble in the open air, subject To its inclemencies, the building of a house to meet in was no sooner proposed and persons appointed to receive contribution. But sufficient sums were soon received to procure the ground and erect the building, which was 100 feet long and 70 broad, about the size of Westminster Hall, and the work was carried on with such spirit as to be finished in a much shorter time than could have been expected. Both house and ground are vested in trustees, expressly for the use of any preacher of any religious persuasion who might desire to say something to the people of Philadelphia. The design and building not being to accommodate any particular sect, but the inhabitants in general, so that even if the Mufti of Constantinople were to send a missionary to preach Mohammedanism to us, he would find a pulpit at his service. Mr. Whitfield, in leaving us, went preaching all the way through the colonies to Georgia. The settlement of that province had lately been begun, but instead of being made with hardy, industrious husbandmen accustomed to labor, the only people fit for such an enterprise, it was with families of broken shopkeepers and other insolvent debtors, many of indolent and idle habits, taken out of the jails, who, being set down in the woods, unqualified for clearing land and unable to endure the hardships of a new settlement, perished in numbers, leaving many helpless children unprovided for. The sight of their miserable situation inspired the benevolent heart of Mr. Whitfield with the idea of building an orphan house, there in which they might be supported and educated. Returning northward, he preached up this charity and made large collections for his eloquence, and of wonderful power over the hearts and purses of his hearers, of which I myself was an instance. I did not disapprove of the design, but as Georgia was then destitute of materials and workmen, and it was proposed to send them from Philadelphia at great expense, I thought it would have been better to have built the house here and brought the children to it. This I advised, but he was resolute in his first project, rejected my counsel, and I therefore refused to contribute. I happened soon after to attend one of his sermons, in the course of which I perceived he intended to finish with the collection, and I silently resolved he should get nothing from me. I had in my pocket a handful of copper money, 3 or 4 silver dollars, and 5 pistoles in gold. As he proceeded, I began to soften, and concluded to give the coppers. Another stroke of his oratory made me ashamed of that, and determined me to give the silver. And he finished so admirably that I emptied my pocket wholly into the collector's dish, gold and all. All this sermon there was also one of our club, who, being of my sentiments respecting the building in Georgia, and suspecting a collection might be intended, had by precaution emptied his pockets before he came from home, toward the conclusion of the discourse. However, he felt a strong desire to give and applied to a neighbor who stood near him, to borrow some money for the purpose. The application was unfortunately made to perhaps the only man in the company who had the firmness not to be affected by the preacher. His answer was, "At any other time, friend Hopkinson, I would lend to thee freely, but not now, for thee seems to be out thy right senses." There you have it. Is the music maybe too loud? Maybe it's just a little loud. Turn it down just a bit. Yeah, there we go. That should be good. Some of Mr. Whitfield's enemies affected to suppose that he would apply these collections to his own private emolument. But I, who was intimately acquainted with him, being employed in printing his sermons and journals, never had the least suspicion of his integrity, but am to this day decidedly of opinion that he was in all conduct a perfectly honest man, and methinks my testimony in his favor ought to have more weight, as we had no religious connection. He used indeed sometimes pray for my conversion, but never had the satisfaction of believing that his prayers were heard. Ours was a mere civil friendship, sincere on both sides and lasted to his death. The following instance will show something of the terms of which we stood. Upon one of his arrivals from England at Boston, he wrote to me that he should soon come to Philadelphia, but knew not where he could lodge when there. As he understood his old friend and host, Mr. Benezet, I think that's right, was removed to Germantown. My answer was, "You know my house. If you can make shift with its scanty accommodations, you will be most heartily welcome." He replied that if I made that kind of offer for Christ's sake, I should not miss of a reward, and I returned, "Don't let me be mistaken. It was not for Christ's sake, but for your sake." One of our common acquaintances, Jocose, witty, humorous, facetious, jocular. Yeah, okay. Alright, I'll buy that. Joculously remarked that knowing it to be custom of the saints, when they received any favor, to shift the burden of the obligation from off their own shoulders and place it in heaven, and I had contrived to fix it on earth. The last time I saw Mr. Whitefield was in London, when he consulted me about his orphan house concern, and his purpose of appropriating it to the establishment of a college. He had a loud and clear voice, and articulated his words and sentences so perfectly that he might be heard and understood at a great distance, especially at his auditories, however numerous, observed the most exact silence. He preached one evening from the top of the courthouse steps, which are in the middle of the Market Street, and on the west side of 2nd Street, which crosses it at right angles. Both streets were filled with his hearers to a considerable distance. Being among the hindmost in Market Street, I had the curiosity to learn how far he could be heard by retiring backward down the street toward the river, and I found his voice distinct till I came up near Front Street, when some noise in that street obscured it. Imagining, then, a semicircle, of which my distance should be the radius, and that it were filled with auditors, to each of whom I allowed 2 square feet, I computed that he might well be heard by more than 30,000. This reconciled me to the newspaper accounts of his having preached to 25,000 people in the fields, and to the ancient histories of generals haranguing whole armies, of which I had sometimes double. By hearing him often, I came to distinguish easily between sermons newly composed and those he had often preached. Let me try. No. I don't know if I would find it. It would go back many years. Well, I guess not too far. I can probably find it. Hold on. Going to find it. Not that one. I go back a while. trying to find some really good music. Gotta find some good music. It's in my, I know it's in my likes, I'm sure. I feel like we're getting close. Hold on. It's like something ice. $5 years? Maybe it's like 8. Mm-hmm. Uh, Maybe it's in my older music. Oh, no. Oh, no. Uh, 7. Maybe 7 or 5, 6. Maybe music 6. I feel like music 6. Where is he? No, maybe not. Oh, no. Found it. There we go. Just stumbled. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Nathan. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just, I just really enjoy. I like the revolutionary period of the United States, and I like a lot of that kind of era. And so I wanted to like read um, things about it. So I was, this is all building up to hopefully I'm going to read the Declaration of Independence and Constitution closer to the July 4th. So, but yeah, I'm just, you know, just here and reading the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin right now. So, and then I also, I play games too, but this is, I like to do this in the mornings, Tuesdays and Fridays. So I'm glad you found me though. Appreciate you being here. Let me go back to my thing. So Front Street. So this is from the Marine Corps band, actually. This song that I've chosen called "The Frozen Cathedral." It's from, I guess the artist is, or the composer is Mackie. It's the President's Own performing it. So Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you being here and watching and following along. So, where was I? He preached one evening at the top of the courthouse steps, which are in the middle of Market Street, and on the west of 2nd Street, which crosses it at right angles. Perhaps we should... Hold on. I'm thinking of this now. Let me... Maps. So we can kind of like illustrate what we're looking at here. Front Street. There's Front Street. All right, here. Let me pull this up as well. I'm going to capture that. Hold on. I just want to illustrate this. See where we are at. Do not make sense. Yep. Capture that, sure. Properties. Let me. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Huh. All right. Let's do that. So Front Street. So here's Front Street. I'm trying to give this a... So here's Philadelphia. Philadelphia. Front Street. So, let's see. See if we can come up to loud, clear voice. The middle of Market Street. And Market. Where would be Market? To Market. Way up here. Front and Market. So right about here. He preached one evening from the top of the courthouse steps, which are the middle of Market Street on the west side of 2nd Street. Oh, okay. Well, didn't quite get that one. Nope. Or maybe 2nd Street. Philadelphia. Well, let's try north. Okay, let's try south. Well, wait. This is 2nd Street. Oh, well, it'll be right there then. Okay, that's all I need to know. So he preached one evening at the courthouse steps, which are in the middle of Market Street. He's giving us directions, so we may as well try and figure out exactly where all this was happening. So middle of Market, on the west side of 2nd, which crosses at right angles. Those streets are filled with hearers to a considerable distance, being among the hindmost in Market Street. Okay. Because that crosses Walnut, and then Market is Front. Market is the main street here. Yes. I had the curiosity to learn how far I could be heard. By retiring backwards down the street toward the river, and I found his voice distinct till I came near Front Street, when some noise in that street obscured it, imagining then a semicircle of which my distance should be the radius, and that it were filled with auditors, to each of whom I allowed 2 square feet, and I computed that he might as well be heard by more than 30,000. This reconciled me to the newspaper accounts of his having preached to 25,000 people in the fields, and to the ancient histories of generals haranguing whole armies, of which I had sometimes doubted. By hearing him often, I came to distinguish him easily between sermons newly composed and those which he had often preached in the course of his travels. His delivery of the latter was so improved by frequent repetitions that every accent, every emphasis, every modulation of voice was so perfectly well tuned and well placed that without being interested in the subject, one could not help being pleased with the discourse. A pleasure of much the same kind that the received from an excellent piece of music. The pleasure of much the same kind with that received from an excellent piece of music. Yeah, I said that right. This is an advantage itinerant. A person who alternates between working and wandering. Huh. A person who travels from place to place, especially for duty or business. Well, very good. Very good. Let's see here. Moving on. Did not know that was a thing. Itinerant. Wanderers and workers and wanderers. From having who are stationary, as the latter cannot well improve their delivery of a sermon by so many rehearsals. His writing and printing, from time to time, gave great advantage to his enemies. Unguarded expressions and even erroneous opinions delivered in preaching might have been afterwards explained or qualified by supposing others that might have accompanied them, or they might have been denied, but litera scripta manet. Let's see, what does that mean? Let's see if we can figure it out. The written letter remains. Here we are. Critics attacked his writings violently, and with so much appearance of reason as to diminish the number of his votaries and prevent their increase, so that I am of the opinion, if he had never written anything, he would have left behind him a much more numerous and important sect, and his reputation might in that case have been still growing, even after his death, as there being nothing of his writing on which to found a censure and gave him a lower character. His proselytes would be left at the liberty to feign for him as great a variety of excellences as their enthusiastic admiration might wish him to have possessed. My business was now continually augmenting my circumstances, growing daily easier. My newspaper having become very profitable, as being for a time almost the only one in this and that neighboring provinces, I experienced too the truth of the observation that, after getting the first £100, it is more easy to get the second. Money itself being of a prolific nature. That's very good. Very good, Franklin. I'm also a tour guide, by the way. So that does also play into it. I have a history degree, and I really do enjoy this. But what brings you out, Nathan? Do you usually look for this kind of content, or? The partnership at Carolina having succeeded, I was encouraged to engage in others and to promote several of my workmen, who had behaved well by establishing them with printing houses in different colonies, on the same terms with that in Carolina. Most of them did well, being enabled at the end of our term 6 years to purchase the types of me. Then maybe that's a misprint. Most of them did well, being enabled in our term to purchase the types of me and go on working. Maybe, okay. Maybe I get it. She's trying to work with people that are like him, I think. By which means several families were raised. Partnerships often finish in quarrels, but I was happy in this. Mine were all carried on and ended amicably, owing, I think, a good deal to the precaution of having very explicitly settled in our articles, everything be done or by or expected from each partner, so that there was nothing to dispute, which precaution I would therefore recommend to all who enter into partnerships for whatever esteem partners may have for, and the confidence in each other at the time of the contract, little jealousies, and disgust may arise, with ideas of inequality in the care and burden of business, which are attended often with breach of friendship and of connection, perhaps, with lawsuits and other disagreeable consequences. Oh. I've searched for Rumble a few years now. Political. Oh. Okay. Thank you for that. It's a little loud. Sure. Thank you for that. Search a few years now for trying to political or gaming. I like the live format when people engage with the chat. Ah, okay. Well, very good. Yeah, I like, I like to look up the words if I don't know a word. I like to, if there's a place that they're saying, I like to put it on a map. Of course, now I probably don't need this map anymore. And yeah, I just enjoy the contents of like historical texts. See what they were like, what they were into. So that's awesome. I'm glad you found it. Glad you found this. And I enjoy the reading. So I find I read more when I read out loud than when I just read to myself. Or I can sit and do it for longer periods. So helps me. And I also like accents too. And that was called The Frozen Cathedral by the President's Own Marine Band. So that was that. It's a good piece of music. Now, an American Symphony by the Marine Band. Let's see. All right, so let's go on to chapter 12. Defense of the Province. I had, on the whole, abundant reason to be satisfied with my being. Oh, wait. Hold on. I almost forgot. I did have one thing. From the beginning. Oops. If I can. Oh, I know it. On window capture. Make it visible. All right. Whoop. And there we go. And here is the slide. So here is a. Oh, no, I don't want that one. I want this one. Enjoy the present hour, be mindful of the past, and neither fear nor wish the approaches of the last. That was one of his many wits and wisdoms from Poor Richard's Almanac. One of my favorite books that I have kept through the years. I think I bought this at like a, it might have been it was like a Boy Scout fair event thing. But very good, very good. That was pretty loud. Hold on a second. Turn that down. There we go. But yes, so this is a good one. Enjoy the past, enjoy the present hour, be mindful of the past. Neither fear nor wish the approaches of the last. So he's saying, live in the moment, live in the present. Don't keep wishing for the past. Don't keep fearing the past or what might come either. He's saying, enjoy the present. Be mindful of the past, but don't wish for it. Don't let it become you. Which is good words. Good words. And I definitely recommend this book if you don't have it. It's just good to have on hand. Just helps you like stay kind of in balance, which is good. Wit and Wisdom, Poor Richard's Almanac, Benjamin Franklin. All right. Minimize. Where was I? Okay. So defense of the province. I had on the whole abundant reason to be satisfied with my being established in Pennsylvania. There were, however, two things that I regretted. There being no provision for defense, nor for a complete education of youth. No militia, nor any college. I therefore, in 1743, drew up a proposal for establishing an academy, and at that time, thinking the Reverend Mr. Peters, who was out of employ, a fit person to superintend such an institution. Where was I? Did I just lose? Oh, I communicated the project to him, but he, having more profitable views in the service of the proprietaries, which succeeded, declined the undertaking, and not knowing another at that time suitable for such a trust, I let the scheme lie a while dormant. I succeeded better that next year, 1744, in proposing and establishing a philosophical society. The paper I wrote for that purpose will be found among my writings when collected. With respect to defense, Spain having been several years at war against Great Britain, and being at length joined by France, which brought us into great danger, and the labored and long-continued endeavor of our governor, Thomas, to prevail with our Quaker Assembly to pass a militia law and make other provisions for security of the province, having proved abortive, I determined to try and what might be done by the voluntary association of the people. Oh my God, Benjamin. That was a sentence. That was a complete sentence. With respect to the defense, Spain having joined the Great Britain and being at the joint with France, the great danger. Okay, you did put a semicolon, but labored in a long continued endeavor to our governor Thomas to prevail the Quaker Assembly to pass militia law and make the other provisions of the determinative of the. Jeez, man, jeez. Good God, man. My English teacher had a problem with me running right on sentences. Wow. All right. To promote this, I first wrote and published a pamphlet entitled Plain Truth. Okay, well, no. That is not what that is. That is not, Plain Truth is not, oh my goodness, not a young Amish teen hiding a pregnancy, giving birth in secret, and flatly denying the baby's body is found. Yes, right, because of this I did that. Yes. That was quite a sentence. Quite a sentence there. But that is not what he wrote. No, what he wrote is this. Plain Truth. Serious considerations. Oh, let's see what this is. Plain Truth. Plain Truth, serious considerations on the present state of the city of Philadelphia and the province of Philadelphia by tradesmen of Philadelphia, printed in that year. Activity, French. Okay, so this is about this French and Spanish conflict. Which, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So he has a pamphlet that he published upon it. Okay. I'll have to look more into that. I've been keeping all these things that he's been referencing on the sidelines. So what I might do is come to print these and look at them later. Let's say Plain Truth. But I'm just trying to get through the autobiography right now. So I've got that. And maybe we'll go back to it. All right. In which I stated our defenseless situation in strong lights, with the necessity of union and discipline for our defense, and promised to propose in a few days an association to be generally signed for that purpose. The pamphlet had a sudden and surprising effect. I was called upon for the instrument of association, and having settled the draft of it with a few friends, I appointed a meeting of citizens in the large building before mentioned. The house was pretty full. I had prepared a number of printed copies and provided pens and ink dispersed all over the room. I harangued them a little on the subject, read the paper, and explained it, and then distributed the copies, which were eagerly signed, not the least objection being made. When the company separated and the papers were collected, we found above 1,200 hands, and other copies being dispersed in the country. The subscribers amounted at length to upward of 10,000. These all furnished themselves as soon as they could with arms, formed themselves into companies and regiments, choose their own officers, and met every week to be instructed in the manual exercise and other parts of military discipline. The women, by subscriptions, among themselves provided silk colors, which they presented to the companies, painted with different devices and mottos, which I supplied. One of the flags of the Pennsylvania Association, 1747, designed by Franklin, made by the women of Philadelphia. Well, there you go. There's a flag that he designed and that the women made. Quite nice. Quite nice indeed. The officers of the companies composing the Philadelphia Regiment, being met, chose me for their colonel. But conceiving myself unfit, I declined that station. He was like, Benjamin, you want to lead our militia? He's like, you know, I would, but I'm really not fit for military service. Might I recommend Mr. Lawrence? Mr. Lawrence, I think, would be better suited to this position. Well, at least he was humble on that front. A fine person and a man of influence who was accordingly appointed. I then proposed a lottery to defray the expense of building a battery below the town and furnishing it with cannon. It filled expeditiously, and the battery was soon erected. The merlons being farmed out of logs. What's a merlon? Merlon? Solid part of embattled parapet. Ah, okay. Between two embrasures. Okay. Parapet is right the corners. Protective wall on the top of the trench. Concealment for the troops. Right. And then embrasure. Small opening in the parapet. Ah, okay. Understood. Being framed and logged and filled with earth. We bought some old cannon from Boston, but these not being sufficient, we wrote England for more, soliciting at the some time our proprietaries for some assistance, though without much expectation of obtaining it. Meanwhile, Colonel Lawrence, William Allen, Abram Taylor, Esquire, and myself were sent to New York by the associators, commissioned to borrow some cannon of Governor Clinton. He at first refused us preemptively. But at dinner with his council, where there was great drinking of Madeira wine, as the custom of that place then was, he softened by degrees, and said he would lend us 6. Well, there you go, guys. The moral of the story is, if someone won't give you what they want, just get them drunk on wine. Get them drunk on Madeira. And they'll give you... They were going to give you no cannons. He got 6 after getting a little bit of drink. Wow. I'm sure those weren't cheap either. After a few more bumpers, he advanced to 10. Whoa! Went from 0 to 10 cannons? I'd be happy if I got 2. But 10 whole cannons. And at length, he very good-naturedly conceded... What? first he refused, and then he said, "No, okay, all right, I'll give you 6. No, you know what? You guys are really cool. I'll give you 10. You know what? You guys are so awesome. I'm gonna give you 18, 18 cannons." Oh wow, the days when you could just persuade with you just go into someone's house and be like, "Hey, would you like to have a drink? I'd like to get some cannons." Like, no. You can try, but no. And then 18 cannons, 7 bottles of Madeira later. Fine cannon. 18 pounders with their carriages, which we soon transported and mounted on our battery. Such a Benjamin Franklin thing to do, too. Where the associators kept a nightly guard while the war lasted. Among the rest, I regularly took my turn of duty there as a common soldier. So he did go and stand and defend and take watch, which is good. My activity into these operations was agreeable to the governor and the council. They took me in confidence, and I was consulted by them in every measure wherein their concurrence was thought useful to the association. Calling in the aid of religion, I proposed to them the proclaiming a fast to promote reformation and implore the blessing of heaven on our undertaking. They embraced the motion, but as it was the first fast ever thought of in the province, the secretary had no precedent from which to draw the proclamation. My education in New England, where a fast is proclaimed every year, was here of some advantage. I drew it in a custom style. A fast? Are you talking about like not eating fast? Or is there another kind of fast that perhaps I'm not observing? Perhaps. Or not knowing of. I don't know. Embrace the motion. Ever in the province. The secretary had no precedent from which to draw my education in New England. Custom style. It was translated into German. Printed in both languages. Pens agents, the colony, the Low Countries, Dutch. Okay. The clergy in different sects the opportunity of influencing their congregations to join the association would probably have been general among all but the Quakers if the peace had not soon intervened. The peace had not soon intervened. It was thought by some of my friends that by my activity in these affairs I should offend that sect, and thereby lose my interest in the assembly of the province, where they formed a great majority. A young gentleman, who had likewise some friends in the house, and wished to succeed me as their clerk, acquainted me that it was decided to displace me at the next election, and he therefore, in good will, advised me to resign, as more consistent with my honor than being turned out. My answer to him was that I had read or heard of some public man who made it a rule never to ask for an office, and never to refuse one when offered to him. I approve, says I, of his rule, and will practice it with a small addition. I shall never ask, never refuse, nor ever resign an office. If they will have my office of clerk to dispose of to another, they shall take it from me. I will not, by giving it up, lose my right of some time or other making reprisals on my adversaries. I heard, however, no more of this. I was chosen again unanimously, as usual, at the next election. He's like, so, someone was like, so I hear, you probably should resign because, they're gonna oust you at the next election. He's like, resign? I'd rather them kick me out by force than resign. Another Benjamin Franklin thing to do, for sure. But he was elected unanimously, so it didn't even matter. It was all good. It was all good. Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious. They're going to oust you. He's bet. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly, Nathan. Exactlamundo. I was trying to fix this. Oops. But now I've got chat at the bottom. Okay. There we go. Yeah. It's like, they're going to oust you. Bet. Exactly right. Exactly right. I heard, however, no more of this. I was chosen again unanimously at the next election. Possibly, as they disliked my late intimacy with the members of council, who had joined the governors in all disputes about military preparations, with which the House had long been harassed. They might have been pleased if I would voluntarily have left them, but they did not care to displace me on account merely of my zeal for the association, and they could not well give another reason. So we're learning a little bit more about his what stances and he would take here. Indeed, I had some cause to believe that the defense of the country was not disagreeable to any of them, provided they were not required to assist in it. And I found that a much greater number of them than I could have imagined, though against offensive war, were clearly for the defensive. Many pamphlets, pro and con, were published on the subject, and some by good Quakers, in favor of our defense, which I believe conceived most of their younger people. A transaction in our fire company gave me some insight into their prevailing sentiments. It had been proposed that we should encourage the scheme for building a battery by laying out the present stock, then about 60 pounds in tickets of the lottery. By our rules, no money could be disposed of till the next meeting after the proposal. The company consisted of 30 members, of which 22 were Quakers, the 8 only of other persuasions. We 8 punctually attended the meeting, but though we thought that some of the Quakers would join us, we were by no means sure of a majority. Only one Quaker, Mr. James Morris, appeared to oppose the measure. He expressed much sorrow that it had ever been proposed, as he said friends were all against it, and it would create such discord as might break up the company. We told him that we saw no reason for that. We were the minority, and if friends were against the measure and outvoted us, we must and should, agreeably to the usage of all societies, submit. When the hour for business arrived, it was moved to put the vote. He allowed we might then do it by the rules. But as he could assure us that a number of members intended to be present for the purpose of opposing it, it would be but candid to allow little time for their appearing. While we were disputing this, a waiter came to tell me 2 gentlemen below desired to speak with me. I went down and found they were 2 of our Quaker members. They told me there were 8 of them assembled at a tavern just by, and that they were determined to come and vote with us, if there should be occasion, which they hoped would not be the case, and desired we would not call for their assistance. Friends? I believe the Friends is the Friends of the Quakers Association. I could be wrong, though. Let me just check. May have missed something in listening. Yeah, Friends refers. So, I think Friends Quakers. Yeah, so they're called the Society of Friends, and they refer them as friends because of the Bible. Members refer to each other as friends in the Bible, and originally referred to them as Quakers, as founders of the movement, George Fox, before the authority of God. But if I didn't clarify that, yes, it's good to know that. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Um, yeah, I just kind of I went with that because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what that means. The Friends Society is the Quakers. Um, but we're against the measure. Outvoted us. Our business arrived. Would be, but when our business arrived to put the vote, he allowed we might do it by the rules. But as he could assure us that a number of members intended to be present for the purpose of opposing it, it would be but candid to allow little time for their appearing. While we were disputing this, a waiter came to tell me 2 gentlemen below desired to speak with me. Um, I'll do this one now. I went down and found there were 2 of our Quaker members. They told me there were 8 of them assembled at a tavern just by, and that they were determined to come and vote with us if there should be occasion, which they hoped would not be the case, and desired we would not call for their assistance if we could do without it, as their voting for such measure might embroil them with their elders and friends. Being thus secure of a majority, I went up, and after little seeming hesitation, agreed to a delay of another hour. Then Mr. Morris, allowed to be extremely fair, not one of his opposing friends, appeared, at which he expressed great surprise. And at the expiration of the hour, we carried the resolution 8-1. And as of the 22 Quakers, 8 were ready to vote with us, and 13, by their absence, manifested that they were not inclined to oppose the measure. I afterward estimated the proportion of Quakers sincerely against defense as 1 in 20, as 1 to 21 only, as 1 to 21 only. For these were all regular members of that society and a good reputation among them, and had due notice of what was proposed at the meeting. So basically, I think Benjamin Franklin is saying here is like, so the Quakers were probably going to be our biggest opposers, but it seemed like they agreed with the measure by not showing up in the first place. I believe that's what he's kind of saying. So the defense was not disagreeable. Okay. Yeah. So it seems like the Quakers were trying to get him to leave. He said, no, you try and make me leave. He's like, and then they're like, we're going to vote against you because you're voting in defense of the city of Philadelphia. He's like, okay. Then the Quakers show up, so it must mean they agree with me to some degree on defending the city. Sounds correct. Sounds correct. Let's see. The Honorable and Learned Mr. Logan, who had always been of that sect, was one who wrote an address to them, declaring his approbation of defensive war, and supporting his opinion by many strong arguments. He put into my hands 60 pounds to be laid out in lottery tickets for the battery, with directions to apply what prizes might be drawn wholly to that service. He told me the following anecdote of his old master, William Penn. Respecting defense. He came over from England when a young man with that proprietary, and as his secretary, it was wartime, and their ship was chased by an armed vessel, supposed to be an enemy. Their captain prepared for defense, but told William Penn and his company of Quakers that he did not expect their assistance, and they might retire into the cabin, which they did except James Logan, who chose to stay upon deck, and was quartered to a gun. They supposed enemy provided a friend, so there was no fighting. But when the secretary went down to communicate the intelligence, William Penn rebuked him severely for staying upon deck, and undertaking to assist in defending the vessel, contrary to the principles of friends, especially as it had not been required by the captain. The captain. This reproof being before all the company piqued the secretary, who answered, I being thy servant, why did thee not order me to come down? But thee was willing enough that I should stay and help to fight the ship, when thee thought there was danger? When there was danger. My being many years in the assembly, the majority of which were constantly Quakers, gave me frequent opportunities of seeing the embarrassment given them by their principle against war. Whenever application was made to them by order of the crown to grant aids for military purposes, they were unwilling to offend government, on the one hand, by a direct refusal, and their friends, the body of the Quakers, on the other, by compliance contrary to their principles. Hence, a variety of evasions to avoid complying. The modes of disguising the compliance when it became unavoidable. The common mode at last was to grant money under the phrase of its being for the king's use, and never to inquire how it was applied. That's how they got around it. So they're like, okay, I mean, we'll give money to the king, I guess. We're still against war, though. We're against war, but the king has to have his money, so that's how it goes, I guess. Seems that would be that seems to be the thing. But if the demand was not directly from the crown, the phrase was found not so proper, and some other was to be invented. As when powder was wanting, I think it was for the garrison at Louisburg, and the government of New England solicited a grant of some of Pennsylvania, which was much urged on the house of Governor Thomas. They could not grant money to buy powder, because that was an ingredient of war. But they voted in aid to New England of 3,000 pounds to be put to the hands of the governor, and appropriated for the purchasing of bread, flour, wheat, or other grain. Some of the council, desirous of giving the house still further embarrassment, advised the governor not to accept provision, as not being the thing he had demanded. But he replied, I shall take the money, for I understand very well their meaning. Other grain is gunpowder. Which he accordingly bought, and they never objected to it. So basically, he's just exposing Quakers here. He's like, yeah, you Quakers, you don't want to, you believe in defense. Defense is necessary, but you just don't want to, you don't want to, you don't want to actually say that you're for it. See the votes. Yeah. It was allusion to this fact, that when in our fire company, we fear the success of our proposal in favor of the lottery, and I had said to my friend, Mr. Singh, one of our members, if we fail, let us move to the purchase of a fire engine with the money. The Quakers can have no objection to that, and then if you nominate me, and I you, as a committee for that purpose, we will buy a great gun, which is certainly a fire engine. I see, says he. You have improved by being so long in the assembly. Your equivocal project would be just a match for their wheat or other grain. Wink, 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 nudge, nudge. Other grain. The embarrassment that the Quakers suffered from having established and published it as one of their principles that no kind of war was lawful, and which being once published, they could not afterwards, however they might change their minds, easily get rid of, reminds me of what I think a more prudent conduct in another sect among us, that of the Dunkers. I don't know about the Dunkers. I do know about the Quakers and their opposition to war. But, nope, that's not. Let's try historical. Nope. I'm gonna get all kinds of basketball players. Oh, wait, who are the Dunkers? Here we go, Antietam. Great. The Dunker movement began in Germany in the early 18th century. The peace treaty ended the 30 Years' War, recognized as 3 state churches. Dissenters were persecuted and forced to meet in communities where some degree of tolerance prevailed. In 1708, the denomination was formed with baptism and 8 believers in full immersion. Okay. All right. Because of the church's prominence, the Battle of Antietam, the Dunkers were the dominant religious denomination in the Sharpsburg area. Huh. Okay. Interesting. Dunker Church. Part of the belief in simplicity. Dunkers practice modesty in their address, general lifestyle. Christian principles stress are pacifism. Members of both North and South refuse military service. The brotherhood of man, including opposition to slavery, and temperance. Total abstinence from alcohol. A typical Dunker church supported their beliefs in simplicity. Hymns were sung with no musical accompaniment from an organ, piano, or other instrument. The congregation was divided with men seated on one side and women on the other. The churches were simple with no stained glass windows, steeple, or crosses. Huh. I was acquainted with one of their founders, Michael Welfare, soon after it appeared. He complained to me that they were grievously calumniated. To make false defamatory statements. Okay. By the zealots of other persuasions, and charged with abominable principles and practices to which there were utter strangers. I told him this had always been the case with new sects, and that to put a stop to such abuse, I imagined it might be well to publish the articles of their belief and the rules of their discipline. He said that it had been proposed among them, but not agreed to for this reason. When we were first drawn together as a society, says he, it had pleased God to enlighten our minds so far as to see that some doctrines which we once esteemed truths were errors, and that others which we had esteemed errors were real truths. From time to time, he had been pleased to afford us farther light, and our principles have been improving, and our errors diminishing. Now we are not sure that we are arrived at the end of the progression, and at the perfection of spiritual and theological knowledge. We fear that if we should once print our confession of faith, we should feel ourselves as if bound and coffined by it, and perhaps be unwilling to receive further improvement, and our successors still more so, as conceiving what we, their elders and founders, had done to something sacred, never to be departed from. This modesty in a sect is perhaps a singular instance in the history of mankind. Every other sect supposing itself in possession of all truth, and that those who differ are so far in the wrong, like a man traveling in foggy weather, those at some distance behind him on the road he sees wrapped up in fog, as well as those behind him, and also the people in the fields on each side, but near him appear clear, though in truth he is as much as fog of any of them. To avoid this kind of embarrassment, Quakers have of late years been gradually declining the public service in the assembly and the magistracy, choosing rather to quit their power than their principle. In order of time, I should have mentioned before that having in 1742 invented an open stove for the better warming of rooms, Franklin stove. Oh yes, right. The Franklin stove. And at some same time saving fuel, as the fresh air admitted was warmed in entering. I made at present of the model to Mr. Robert Grace, one of my early friends, who, having an iron furnace, found the casting of the plates these stoves a profitable thing. And they were growing in demand. To promote that demand, I wrote the published pamphlet entitled An Account of the New Invited Pennsylvania Fireplaces, wherein their construction and manner of operation is particularly explained, their advantages above every other method of warming rooms demonstrated, and all objections that have been raised against the use of them answered and obviated. Wow. He's like, so you don't like my stove, huh? You don't like my stove? To promote the demand, I wrote a pamphlet. Basically, this is advertising. It's like, this is my stove, and it is probably the best stove ever made. It's a pamphlet I am giving to you. If you would like to buy it from me, Benjamin Franklin, you can read about it in my pamphlet. See how great I am? See how great this stove is? All questions are answered within this pamphlet. This pamphlet had a good effect. Advertising. Governor Thomas was so pleased with the construction of the stove, as described in it, that he offered to give me a patent for the sole vending of them for a term of years, but I declined it from a principle which has ever weighed with me on such occasions, vis-a-vis that, as we enjoy great advantages from the inventions of others, we should be glad of an opportunity to serve others by any invention of ours, and this should do freely and generously. Ooh, that's gonna upset the most patent office petunias. Patent office petunias. Words like that. It's like, you're gonna give it to the people for free? You're gonna do it? You're gonna give them? What? What? Huh? Yeah, that was Benjamin Franklin. An ironmonger in London, however, assuming a good deal of my pamphlet and working it up into his own and making some small changes in the machine which rather hurt its operation, got a patent for it there and made, as I was told, a little fortune by it. And this is not the only instance of patents taken out for my inventions by others, though not always with the same success, which I never contested, as having no desire of profiting my patents myself and hating disputes, the use of these fireplaces in very many houses, both of this and the neighboring colonies, has been and is a great saving of wood to the inhabitants. Wow. That's just great, you know? He's like, yeah, I know people are using my design. I know they're using it. And I'm still not gonna patent it because it's a benefit and saving of wood to the inhabitants. Benefit to the colonies and saving of wood to the inhabitants. That's just nice. And now we are on chapter 13, but it is about noon, and I've been streaming since 10, and I usually stream for about 2 hours. So I think I will finish it here, as I do have other tasks to get to today. But I do appreciate those of you who have tuned in and have watched with me this morning, and I hope that you all have a wonderful morning as well, enjoying the rest of your morning there too. But of course, if you would like, feel free to follow me on YouTube and Rumble, and you know, feel free to follow me on YouTube and Rumble, and follow me on Twitter, and I post there sometimes as well. And if you are interested, or maybe you have more reading recommendations that are within public domain, feel free to let me know what those are. Because right now I'm just in obviously the revolutionary reading phase, but it does not mean that that will be always what I will be doing. Thank you for sharing your time. Try to catch your future streams. Thank you, Nathan, and thank you for being here, and thank you for chatting with me. I appreciate you. Appreciate you tuning in. It's been a pleasure, and of course, I look forward to seeing you again in another stream. But for now, we'll just go back to full screen for a moment. I need to like kind of zoom it. There, and then expand. There we go. That's better. So, thank you again. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and a rest of your week. And I will see you on Friday, probably for some more revolutionary reading as well. I might turn back to the Law of One. I was reading a little bit of that. And I think that has to do with physics and supposedly the god of Ra, which reads that. And he mentioned Benjamin Franklin as one of the people that's of importance. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. In any case, thank you all. Have a wonderful night, a wonderful evening, wonderful morning, and take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Semper Sursum, Excelsior. Bye-bye. hold on. I forgot. Hold on. I'm going to leave up. Where's what is the capture? Where's the capture? No. There we go. Last words from Ben for the day.